What's up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. So please subscribe here and please follow me on Instagram at RussoLifts. In case something happens to this channel, you can follow, message me, interact with me directly, and there's daily content on there. Hope to see you guys on Instagram. And what's up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. So I wanted to have a genetics discussion with Tony. So one of my most common DMs is, my genetics are shit. I can't gain any mass, or my muscle insertions, they don't look good. How far can you actually change your genetics as far as that goes? Like, I've talked about in the past how when you add in peptides or growth hormone, you're going to eventually stack new permanent muscle cells that you can keep for the rest of your life. Is there anything else that you can change genetic-wise to help people who think they have bad genetics out? Some people obviously aren't trying hard enough in the gym, aren't eating enough in the gym, or training correctly, but let's say they've been doing that and they haven't been noticing much, and they went enhanced and didn't notice much either. Are there other ways you can combat the genetics debate?
This is something I could talk about for days, not just hours. So I'm going to try and keep it concise, but I'm also going to end up venting a little bit because I'm really passionate about parts of this. One of the things I love about experimenting with the chemistry of performance-enhancing drugs is that we're not stuck with our genetics. I believe that I just had my genetic test done. I'm going to give some background. And it's massive. The amount of genes that they test is huge. And scientists don't know what every gene does yet. Mm-hmm. They're still experimenting with each one. But we know that muscle growth is mediated by, let's say 20 top factors. So you could not that we know all the genes that affect it right now, but you could sort of isolate these 20 genes are going to impact muscle growth the most. This one determines how much glycogen the muscle can hold. This one determines your sensitivity to androgens. This one determines your testosterone level, your ability to grow new muscle, myostatin levels. And so when I design the anabolic matrix, it sort of has a genetic underlying theme, which is that you're taking each gene or growth pathway or whatever you want to call it, and you're trying to figure out where the bottlenecks or the limiting factors are. So if you have someone that has bad genetics, that's such a generic, generalized thing to say, because what genetics are bad? Of the 20 main, of the thousands of muscle building genetics, and out of the 20 main muscle genetics, what are you talking about? Are you talking about that you're like weak? Or are you talking about that you just can't assimilate carbohydrates very well? Are you talking about your testosterone's low, your IGF levels are low? So if we want to defeat our genetics, we've got to get rid of each one of those bottlenecks, each one of those limiting factors. And you could put them in order of priority, like your insulin-like growth factor levels and your sensitivity to your insulin-like growth factor levels may be the most important thing in muscle building. And your myostatin levels, right? Those three. So you want to give whatever attention is due based on what a priority that is. So you don't want to spend a ton of time on small genetics that have a small impact on muscle growth. So we have isolated your anabolics levels, your androgen levels, what's hitting the androgen receptor in the muscle, like testosterone, or your sensitivity to it, IGF, your myostatin levels, your inflammation response.
So you want to have a better inflammation response for more muscle growth?
Yeah, more inflammation. So you can go down this list, and it's not like you're modifying. There's modifying your actual genetics. I don't recommend anybody do that, because what kind of a domino effect could that create to wreck our bodies and cause cancer? But that is the future. In the future, we'll be able to, spin a dial and say, oh, let's take this gene and activate this one and deactivate that one, and we'll be able to mess with it. That's going to be a long ways away because of the danger of it. In the meantime, it's not the gene itself. Well, it can be the gene expression. Okay, so you can stimulate the gene to express itself more or less, and there's supplements and drugs that we can use to do this. And then there's the downstream effect of the gene, like what is the impact of that gene getting triggered do, and we address that with a drug or with lifestyle or diet or whatever, but usually a drug. So if we're okay, so normally we're thinking if someone has bad genetics for building muscle, they have like our genetics, like white people genetics, or even worse, Asian people genetics, okay? To where their muscles are longer and tight, and they're better built for more endurance and less power. They're not meant to hold as much glycogen as someone who's just like built for just short bursts of power. And I had my genetic test done, and they said I had the worst genetics for building muscle that you could have, but I have the most elite athlete in genetics for endurance. So I'm supposed to be like a professional cyclist or a swimmer or something like that. And I'm a bodybuilder, right? So first of all, take me as an example. The worst genetics you could have for building muscle, and yet I built muscle, like a lot of muscle. Like I'm at Olympia and I'm as big as all of the classic physique professional competitors. That's what size I am right now. And a lot of them have really great genetics. So how did I get to that level? And that's by addressing each item of the genetics. Now, before I was on steroids, I developed a pretty good physique, but it was extremely high maintenance. Because when you have terrible genetics for building muscle, you also have terrible genetics for maintaining muscle. Muscle just wants to shrink every opportunity it gets. So people look at my old pictures as an ectomorph, natural, natty lifter, and say, you had a great physique back then. You didn't need steroids. I'm like, well, yeah, I took that picture on the best day I looked that whole month. I never looked that good the whole rest of the month because my training and diet and sleep, everything had to be flawless or I would just wither away. Now I've modified my body to where it's not a liability, it's an asset. Now I built permanent muscle to where I'm much lower maintenance. And I was inspired to do that. I already knew I wanted to do that, to basically modify my genetics or my genetic expression. I knew I wanted to do that before I met Coach Trevor, but I didn't know for sure whether it was really possible until I met Coach Trevor and I saw a guy that's absolutely massive that hardly works out, definitely doesn't diet, and was like totally over bodybuilding in general. He's obsessed with the chemistry, continue to pioneer the chemistry. But like, if there's anybody who doesn't want to be a slave to the bodybuilding lifestyle, it's Coach Trevor.
Yeah.
And Coach Trevor, when I met his brother, and his brother's like 150 pounds at 5'11", like a twig with no muscle on him. And I'm like, how is that possible? You got all the genetics. Because I assumed even at that point, okay, Trevor must have had better genetics. And Trevor's like, no, I was the same way. He was 150 pounds natural at 5'11", and then he got up to 285 pounds with abs shredded. That doesn't happen unless you're sort of modifying your body on a genetic level. And the main component that he used to do it was creating new muscle cells. So instead of just growing his ectomorph muscle cells bigger and then they just deflate again, he actually split and created new cells. So his entire research in the beginning, which we haven't even fully disclosed all of his approaches and things, you're getting pieces as we go along, but was how do we create more DNA? How do we create more cells? How do we get those cells to attach to the muscle cells, become muscle cells, and become new muscle cells? How do we have old muscle cells split into new muscle cells? And you can't, please don't oversimplify it. I'm going to tell you the components of it that are the most important factors, but understand that there's many other factors that go into it, and that is growth hormone, insulin, steroids, including testosterone and trenbolone, and estrogen, which hopefully you're getting enough from testosterone converting anyways.
Right.
So it was that combination. Oh, plus the bringing in the new DNA, whether it's pulling it from your own bone marrow or injecting stem cells or a number of other ways. That's a whole separate discussion. But you have to bring in more cells, more DNA to do it. So that combination is how he built new permanent muscle that he didn't even have to work out.
Yeah, I've never seen him really work out at all, and he's massive, so he's a walking testimony that you can permanently change your genetics forever.
Also understand that in doing those experiments, he could go back and do it again healthy, knowing what he knows now, or healthier, but in doing those experiments, he did damage his health a lot. So like, you got to be careful when you go down this path of affecting your body on a genetic level and growing new cells. You got to be careful what you wish for.
Right. Slow and steady, not shotgun.
Okay.
Especially
I like the short. So the other theory is you can't just like gently ease your body into creating new cells. Your body's going to try to reach homeostasis and it'll fight against you. Mm-hmm. So you have to blast it hardcore. But what he found and we found through our research and experimentation is that these hardcore blasts are much healthier if they're done for shorter periods of time and you still get the effect. So let's say in order to build a certain amount of new muscle, you need 60 days of blasting. If we do that in like 5-day increments with lots of rest in between, we never have a side effect. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was always some side effect, you know, that you don't even know
chronic
exists.
side effects.
Yeah,
stacking.
no apparent, noticeable, recognizable long-term or short-term side effect when we're doing this in short bursts, which goes completely against old school anabolic steroid cycle theory, which is like, oh, do 6 weeks or do 6 weeks. See, I'm always thinking short, like 8, 12,
15,
16. Yeah. So and then I started experimenting with short-term bursts. Like right now, I would rather do a 3-day blast and then just cruise for a week than be on stuff for like 9 days. That's kind of what I'm doing. Like for Olympia here, I had lost a lot of muscle. I hadn't worked out very hard in the last few months because of my torn hamstring and all this. And I'm like, okay, I got to put on mass real quick. Let me just blast for a few days and put on like 8 pounds in like 3 days. And so I did it, and that's where I'm at right now, like 232 pounds. Because I want to look good. And no water retention. There was no water retention. If you look at the pictures, it's vascular everywhere. But that's not permanent new muscle. It's muscle I already had. Mm-hmm. But with that blast with zero side effects, I got back to like most people. It takes them, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to sort of get back their size, and I just do it in a couple days by doing the blasting approach.
Gotcha. Well, that is just some of the factors. Again, take all those words with a grain of salt and go buck wild.